Hello everyone, welcome back. My people, wonder shall never end. Like when he thought that he have seen it all in Nigeria, come this shocking one. The president just set free convicted criminals and Nigerians are outraged. So, drug dealers, kidnappers, murderers, pardoned. How can we talk about law and order when those who terrorized our communities are suddenly walking free? This is not mercy, my people. This is dangerous. This is a betrayal of justice. So the victims and the families are left questioning the meaning of justice, and the nation is demanding answer. Oh, my people, you know the state we are now when it comes to insecurity. Like, who is advising Tinubu? My people, what is motive behind this? But Nigerians are not staying silent, my people. Voices like Rufai Oseni are speaking out, calling this pardon what it truly is: a threat to public safety and a step backward for accountability. Let's hear what he said as well as what other Nigerians are saying about this shocking presidential pardon. Nigeria, which way?
In another development, the presidential pardon granted last week by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to 175 inmates and ex-convicts continues to generate public reaction. The clemency followed approval by the National Council of State, while among those pardoned by President Tinubu was Maryam Sanda, who had been sentenced to death in 2017 for killing her husband. The 37-year-old convict had spent 6 years and 8 months at Suleja Medium Security Custodial Center after being sentenced to death for culpable homicide. Her pardon sparked widespread criticism. In response, presidential spokesperson Bayo Ononuga said that Sanda's family pleaded for her release in the best interest of her 2 children, adding that the plea was also anchored on her good conduct in jail, her remorse, and her embracement of a new lifestyle, demonstrating her commitment to being a model prisoner. Sanda was arrested in November 2017 for stabbing her husband to death over alleged infidelity. She claimed her husband died after falling on a broken shisha pot during an argument. Rufai, we took this story back in, I believe, when she was sentenced. It was heartbreaking to hear the circumstances that surrounded her death. And I'll take some reactions because the story has generated quite a few on social media, X, Instagram, and of course, Facebook. And I'll take Obiora, who wrote, "You can call it mercy, or you can call it what it is. Another reminder of how uneven our system truly is. On paper, a pardon looks noble. A show of compassion, a second chance, the image of a just leader extending grace. But in a country where justice bends for the powerful, mercy stops feeling like principle and starts to look like privilege. Too many ordinary people are serving endless sentences for lesser crimes, forgotten in overcrowded prisons with no one speaking their names. They don't get presidential attention or public sympathy. They just fade into the system's silence. And then there's Nnamdi Kanu, 5 years in detention, dragged through endless court proceedings with no clear resolution and no political will to end it. The same government that can find compassion in one case somehow finds only punishment in his. That's not justice. That's selective morality. Rufai, we had Honorable Obia Agwocha on the morning show yesterday, and he, touched on this particular Twitter user's comment, the fact that, the only thing that Nnamdi Kanu is looking for is a release so that they could attend to his health. And, this sort of conversation of who gets pardoned or not is, the sort of conversation I'd like us to have. I'll take another expose before I come to you. And this is from Awele, who wrote, "Was the family of the late Yamin Bello, that's her husband, consulted and in agreement before his killer, Maryam Sanda, is being granted pardon?" That's the question. The reason for her pardon is vexatious. The late Yamin had his life cruelly cut short. No opportunity to see his children grow up, and Maryam is free. And that's one of the conversation, that Maryam is free so that she can attend to her children. Your thoughts on the story, Rufai?
I like to talk with empirical
As
facts.
always, yes.
Presidential pardon, offense committed, October 2025. Drugs, 29.2%. Unlawful mining, 24%. Homicide, 13.5%. Fraud and corruption, 12.3%. Hijacking, 5.3%. Firearms, 2.3%. Robbery and theft, 2.3%. Human trafficking, 1.8%. You see, at this rate, let's all go mad together. Because if we have now become a nation where we pardon criminals that our institutions fought hard to convict, then President Tinubu, in your next pardon, I have some names for you. You must pardon Lawrence Omajiakpo Anini. You must pardon Oyenusi, the criminal. You must pardon Shekau. Look at the joke Nigeria has become. You pardon all these people that have perpetrated heinous crimes, then you now have to drag the name of Herbert Macaulay in it to make it look legitimate. You now have to drag some of our founding fathers in it to make it, after you pardon all the criminals. Look at Farouk Lawan. There was a sting operation where the state security agencies, they were the ones that baited him with the bribe, the max notes. He pardoned him. So what nation do we have? What nation, I ask, do we have? But in the case of Nnamdi Kanu, people have been speaking. Some Igbo, top leaders came to Buhari last time to seek a peaceful resolution to the matter. No. Nnamdi Kanu is not being granted access to see doctors. This one, they're not even asking for pardon, access to see doctors. But all of a sudden, we are seeing all of this pardon flying around. So what lessons do we want for children, the generations yet unborn? A woman, we took the story here, planned the attack for good measure, also lacerated the husband's body. You say you talk to the woman's family before you pass. So the husband family, they have nothing. How would the husband family feel today?
And that's the right question.
See, the prerogative of mercy is expected that a president will be able to, dispense that prerogative reasonably. But as it is today, like somebody was saying today, I think they should be adding civil society so that we can circumvent the names brought forward. You see, our nation has just become a joke where anything happens. At this rate, we'll start pardoning certificate forgers. If they will not even give themselves pardon already. Right. So what kind of nation are we living in? What kind of generation do we want to give? What kind of country?
Themselves pardon. Tell me, how would they pardon themselves once they forge the certificates?
No, people like Nnadi that their allegations of certificate forging.
Yes.
When they get to positions, they will pardon themselves now.
All right.
When they get high up there, they will pardon themselves. We are living in a country where, you are having all sorts of... Let me read a newspaper article that was written many years ago for you, Oji, where somebody was saying that people of questionable characters will be the one ruling Nigeria over the years to come. See, New Breed newspaper, this was in 1990s something, where they were saying drug barons may determine the political future of Nigeria.
These are these
are the issues in the country. This is not nice. And please, President Tinubu, with due respect, let's stop all of this. Let's make it make sense.
Yes. I mean, we have to live in a country where it appears that the federal government, presents itself as being accountable, fair, and just. What is good for the goose, is that how they say, is good for the gander. The gander. Well, we'll continue to follow up on this story. I'm sure there will be more names that will come up from this executive presidential pardon.
So, constitutionally, help us understand what exactly is said about the rights of the president to exercise the prerogative of mercy. Are there any limits to this right?
Thank you. Well, by virtue of Section 175 of the 1999 Constitution, the president has basically an unlimited constitutional power to exercise what is called the prerogative of mercy, which is essentially an act of clemency or pardon, where the president issues a proclamation, basically forgiving and also pardoning those who have been convicted or those who are subject to the criminal process, whether in terms of prosecution and so on. So basically, the Constitution does not place any limitation regarding the qualification, regarding the requirements for granting clemency, except that the president is required to act on the recommendation of a body called the Presidential Committee on Prerogative of Mercy, which is headed by the Attorney General of the Federation, in this case, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi. Yes, sir. Now, when the president acts on the recommendation of the Presidential Committee and issues clemency or presidential pardon, that pardon is absolute. What it implies in law is that it extinguishes and basically brings to an end the criminal history and the criminal record of the person that is pardoned. The person becomes basically a new person, and there is no longer reference to the criminal liability of the person. Now, the current pardon that the president has issued for about 175 individuals is one that expectedly has triggered very interesting national conversation. I have had cause to examine the list of those who are beneficiaries of this set of presidential pardon. And I find it rather curious that the president, for reasons best known to him, and the Presidential Committee on Prerogative of Mercy has decided to issue pardons to individuals that we do not think merit it. There are some persons on that list whose pardon is understandable, like Mamman Varsa. I personally have a position to this that, look, in the case of Mamman Varsa, for example, General Babangida, who orchestrated the sham trial and conviction of Mamman Varsa, himself was a coup plotter. He also basically staged a coup that overthrew a previous administration. So I do not know what moral authority that Babangida stands to be speaking that, oh, the security of the state was threatened and so on in his book or whatever. So on Mamman Varsa's pardon, that is understandable, that is excusable. And the same can also be said about the Ogoni 9, as you are aware, which was basically a situation in the Niger Delta region where I come from. But beyond that, some of the other names on that list, one is minded to ask what the motive of the president is. When you have a presidential pardon awarded to over 30 convicts, persons who were convicted for involvement in hard drugs, in illicit drugs, being basically issued pardons, the question is what now becomes of the years of work and effort that the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency had put into the arrest and the prosecution of these individuals. What message does that send to other drug traffickers who are going out of their way to basically undermine the security of the country? You also look at some of the other names on the list, like Maryam Sanda. I'm not sure if she merits a pardon or whether this is the right time to issue a pardon to her. Here is a woman who the court confirmed in 2020 gruesomely murdered her husband in 2017. And did so in the most vicious way, stabbed him multiple times. And the gentleman died. And now he's in the grave, his body is decaying, he has been forgotten. And the person who was supposed to be his most trusted ally, the person who was supposed to be the love of his life, took his life prematurely. And now we are being told, oh, that in the interest of the children, in the interest of the family, and because she has allegedly shown remorse, let her forgive and let her have a new lease of life. Let her be released. What becomes of the family of, I think, Alilu, the husband, the deceased husband that she murdered? So these are the questions. And what message, in terms of the optics, does this send? My perception is that this pardon that the president has issued is basically going to embolden criminality in the country. It is like a carnival for criminals in our country. And I find curious that certain names are also missing. Because if the president is now basically so emboldened, so audacious, to issue pardon to people that are involved in hard drugs and kidnappers, hardened kidnappers, then how come that Aneni, the man who basically gave kidnapping the notoriety that they have in the country today, was not pardoned? How come that Evans, the notorious, the billionaire kidnapper in quote, has not been pardoned? So if the president is now basically becoming the savior of hardened criminals in our country, then he should go the whole way and pardon all those who have also been found guilty of similar offenses. They should open the prison wall, the prison gates. They should open Kirikiri and allow the criminals to go. I do not think that some of these pardons were warranted. And the argument that, oh, they have become new people, they are reformed, they have shown remorse, that is questionable. If you have been to a typical Nigerian custodial center, if you have been to the Nigerian Correctional Service, if you understand how the Nigerian prison system works, there is hardly anything correctional about the Nigerian Correctional Service. And I speak from experience as somebody who has also had, cause to understand how the Nigerian custodial system works. So I do not buy the argument that all these individuals are remorseful, that all individuals have turned a new leaf, that because they have been enrolled in the National Open University, therefore we should just simply forgive them. So we need to really question the motive of the president in issuing these pardons. Yes, he has the conditional authority to do so. Yes, nobody can challenge that conditional authority to the extent that Section 175 allows him. But the message that is being sent across the country today is that the victims have been relegated and that criminals can have a field day. So I do not agree with some of these pardons that the president has issued.
A couple of issues really that you have put together here. Some have said, as a lawyer, some of these processes sometimes may not have been followed through well. Some of these trials, perhaps for lack of representation, due diligence, some of these trials may have gone the other way. So a possibly innocent person may have been sentenced. So that would be a false positive in that sense. And I'm sure you are aware of some of these things. On the one hand, it's also been said that, well, our prisons are no more prisons. They're meant to be correctional centers. So it's good to see that a lot of these people, their behavior is being corrected in that sense. So don't you think this is really an act in good faith? First, it decongests our correctional centers on the one hand. It also encourages other inmates to look at life as, okay, I can get a second shot at life, so let me do better while I'm here. Let me try to pursue education. Let me try to be a better person for the society. So having looked at all of those factors, what did you say it's a way to go? Because I know lawyers who also say, well, temper justice with mercy. So if you ask for that in court, why not support that in real life?
You've asked a question, which is understandable. But the point I am making is that if we are now going to simply issue pardon based on the reasons that this government has given, then every person that is in the Nigerian custodial center should equally be pardoned, right? Because if you are saying, oh, let us decongest the custodial center, I support the congestion because I know that the Nigerian custodial centers are heavily, congested. But the way to go about it is not in the manner that this president has done. And in any event, if you want to decongest the custodial centers, you have to examine the entire criminal justice system as a whole. The president, I do not believe, has any interest in decongesting the Nigerian custodial centers. 2 years, he has spent getting to 3 years in office. We have not seen any reform of the police because it is the police that is responsible for the congestion. By arresting people unlawfully, arbitrarily, throwing them into the custodial centers. We haven't seen any serious reform in that regard. We're going to test saying that. So if you want to pardon, seems to be essentially individual who to infer that possibly the process of presidential pardon has been commercialized. Yeah, right? And what is the basis? What is the basis for giving these pardons to individuals convicted of very serious offenses? I do not think that the manner the president has done this is proper. I believe there could have been a better way to go about this. And look at even one of the individuals there, Kelvin, who was convicted for kidnapping. What is the guarantee that when individuals return to the society, that their victims are going to be safe? What arrangement has the federal government made to guarantee the safety of witnesses who testified at the trial against these individuals? Have the government put in place a witness protection program to guarantee their safety? How about the families of the victims? How about the families of the victims? Has the government reached out to them? Has the government made efforts to ensure that their concerns are addressed?
All right.
I do not think this was done.
Because, Mr. Effiong, because of the weight of these concerns, and you've alluded to the possibility that, there could be partisan and political pressures on, the Committee on the Prerogative of Mercy, isn't it concerning also that there are no limits to this exercise of the powers of the Prerogative of Mercy? And should it be subjected to some form of constitutional review?
Well, I'm not sure if that will be possible, because if you look at what is applicable in most jurisdictions, the president, even in the UK, the crown, if you look at the power of the state to issue pardon, it is hardly contested. It is hardly pardon. Even in the United States, debuted as the most advanced democracy in the country. Look at the pardon that President Biden handed down shortly before he left office. When Donald Trump came in, the people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th, I believe, he issued pardon to nearly all of them, despite the gravity of the offending that they committed. So, historically and across jurisdictions across the globe, the power of the head of state or the president to issue pardon is hardly subject to limitations. And there is a philosophy behind that, which is that the president should have the discretion. And it is also expected that the president should act in the public interest. But what I see in this pardon that President Tinubu has handed down, it looks largely political. It looks as if the interest that precipitated these pardons is not that of the nation. I believe that most of these pardons are issued because the individuals who are beneficiaries of these pardons have access to possibly members of the Presidential Committee on Prerogative of Mercy. Right? Look at Maryam Sanda, for example. The mother is known to be a highly influential person. I believe even possibly a member of the ruling party. So is it that the committee just sat down and began to pick names at random and recommended them for pardon? I do not think so. I believe that these pardons have been issued because of influence peddling, because of access to power, and possibly for partisan reasons.
All right.
Yes, there are those who have been pardoned that merits them. Look at the one of Abed Macaulay. It's a bit pejorative. We know Abed Macaulay, the father of nationalism in Nigeria, who was, controversially and politically convicted by the British colonialists, I think in 1913. And in 2025, the president is issuing a pardon. And if you look at Section 175 of the 1999 Constitution, the power of the president to issue pardon is limited to offenses created by an act of the National Assembly.
All right.
Abed Macaulay was not convicted for an offense created by an act of the National Assembly. And under the saving provisions under the Constitution, I do not think that colonial laws have been saved, have been made part of our corpus juris as part of our laws in Nigeria. So there's even a constitutional question regarding that of Abed Macaulay, which is yet to be answered, which some of us are still interrogating. Whether indeed this president has the power to issue pardon to Abed Macaulay. Because he's now looking as if Macaulay actually committed a crime. There is a bit of history that shows
Mr. Effiong, we must anchor.
Have been an attempt by the colonialists to silence him. So they just choose some of those credible names to basically give credence to this highly controversial pardon that the president has issued. If we are tired of fighting crime as a country,
we must anchor the conversation. At this point, Mr. Effiong, pardon me for butting in, but we must anchor the conversation.
So, my people, that is it. And I quite agree with Rufai Oseni as well as Barrister Inibehe. Yes, Tinubu should go ahead and pardon all the criminals in Nigeria, as well as he should, open the prison gate and allow all the criminals to go. And also scrap judiciary, prison, police, EFCC, ICPC, and other service is not needed again, my people, so that everybody will rest, since Nigeria has turned to Banana Republic. Anyway, my people, so make I bring this update to you guys. I don't know what you think, because everything that are happening in Nigeria now, like I'm not understanding it again, honestly.